Welcome back to the Mintner Method. I'm your host, Andrew Mintner, and on today's episode slash video, we're going to dive into the Week 3 matchup between Arizona and Kansas State. Now, this is a Friday night matchup, which is, always like a degenerate game. It feels like, people are gearing up for Saturday or Sunday for NFL, and they just, have to scratch that itch on Friday or Thursday, or God forbid, a Wednesday game when like Maxion comes back into the fold. But this game has a lot of appeal to me simply because some of the players are just incredibly good. I've talked about Noah Fifita and Tatora McMillan before, and Fifita, in my opinion, is one of the best quarterbacks that flies under the radar, especially from like the intermediate depth. I mean, he's just a monster in the middle of the field. And so we have some advanced statistics, kind of like a mashup that I do when I'm looking at the games. Now, remember, we do have very small sample sizes to start, but it is important to kind of see where these teams are going. We have a limited amount of time, so it's not like we can wait like 7 or 8 weeks until we have all the data we need, for a proper sample size. But this kind of helps us along the way. So I have some advanced statistics here that you can see on the screen. This is offensive predicted points per attempt, so it's kind of like an EPA. I get that from college football data, which you guys will see here in a minute when I click on a couple of things. And it's like an efficiency metric. You have offensive explosiveness, offensive stuff rate, which is a rushing statistic, whether or not a running back gets stopped at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage. And then you have offensive line yards, which is an offensive line metric. The higher the offensive line yards, the better the offensive line. Front seven havoc allowed, and then you have your other efficiency measures here. And then they correlate, with the defensive for the mashup. So the thing that stands out simply to me, Arizona, extremely explosive. Now, a lot of that is going to be slanted towards the New Mexico game in their first game. And so, we have to kind of take that with a grain of salt, considering when they played, I believe it was Northern Iowa, if I'm not mistaken, not really explosive at all, to be perfectly honest. Northern Arizona, excuse me, my bad. So coming back here, you can see, though, they are explosive. What gives me intrigue here is that Kansas State has been horrendous in limiting explosive plays, and that was shown all throughout the Tulane game. And that is, nothing against Tulane, but they have a new coaching staff. Willie Fritz is gone. Pratt is gone. And they looked better. I would say almost as good as they looked during the Willie Fritz era there. And that's supposed to be a team on the downswing this year, from a production standpoint and from a coaching staff overhaul standpoint. And so to allow that type of explosiveness is like very alarming to me. But the other side of that is when we get further down here, it's all from a passing standpoint, right? So their defensive back havoc rate 124th. So basically that means if they're getting pass breakups or interceptions, or maybe they're applying pressures or getting tackles for losses, from a secondary standpoint, they're only doing that 2.5% of the time. And so that is pretty alarming. And then your passing efficiency from a defensive standpoint, 129th is just not going to cut it in this type of environment. That really gives me a lot of pause, especially if you're feeling like Kansas State is the team you want to back, and because they're at home or whatever. The thing is, I'm not a fan of Dino Babers as offensive coordinator for this Arizona team. I feel like they should be throwing the ball way more than what they are, considering that is their strength. But the time they are going to throw the ball, they are going to see a ton of success against this secondary that is just,
I'm going to say outmatched in this instance. Now, the offensive line here is a concern if you're Arizona, simply because that's just not. That's never a good thing, right? If you have a weak offensive line, you always feel like you're going to be making up for their deficiencies. But Fifita and McMillan are probably, I mean, arguably a top three tandem in all of college football. And I mean, even though McMillan just was playing New Mexico and he 300 receiving yards is still 300 receiving yards. Like, I mean, let's not get it twisted here. That's insane. Now, I was a little concerned with his last box score, as I'll show you real quick. I thought maybe he got injured or something might have happened, but pretty lackluster showing here. 2 receptions, 11 yards against Northern Arizona. So when I looked at like the snaps, he did run 25 routes and had 5 targets. So they just weren't really honing in when it came to the offense in that game. It wasn't really, that wasn't the game plan. They were playing very slow. They ran the ball a good amount. So it wasn't, he wasn't injured. So that's what I was most concerned with, is that he was going to be injured, and then that I felt like, if he's not playing this week, you are going to be really, really up against it against this Kansas State team. So now if we look at the flip side, you can see that Kansas State, they do decently. They are decent from an offensive line standpoint. That's kind of like their calling card normally. When Colin Klein was there, they run that play action quarterback power type offense where, they're expected to kind of grind it out in that sense. As you can see, rushing the ball very good, passing, above average. Arizona, from a defensive standpoint, hasn't really been terrible, but they haven't really been good. It's like average, right? And so for me, I feel like they have room for improvement, because if we come here to look at their returning production, which we're still going to use in the first couple weeks because it is good to understand what we're working with here, 13th in defensive returning production from the 41st ranked S&P Plus defense last year. So that defense has room to get better, and this was a shocking number. People were not expecting them to be that good defensively, and this is where you can kind of see 100th in offensive returning production, and McMillan and Fifita, they own the vast majority of that returning production on the offensive side, and that's kind of where they're going to be dependent upon. Now, as we're looking, we have a couple other things. From a quarterback standpoint, I don't really need to beat home Fifita much, but it is nice to look at. Versus Power 5 defenses, he was 10th overall in EPA per pass attempt, so, good there. Second half trailing, he was, 49th, so very good there still. And then when you're looking at different like strategies and stuff, versus the blitz, he's 3rd overall. Versus the non-blitz, he is going to be 29th. So, these are the type of things that just kind of solidify like what you're working with from the quarterback standpoint. He's good in all areas. And so it's not like he has to play in this gimmicky offense where, he's dependent on all kinds of different things. He's just good. He's good. And I think that speaks volumes when he took over for Jaden DeLora last year after game 4 and never gave the job back. So I am sitting here leaning towards Arizona and the points. They are right now, I believe, 7.5 point underdogs. And I think from the way the game's going to play out, they have exactly what you kind of need if you do need a backdoor cover, or if you're trying to score points in a hurry. They have an elite passing offense. And when we look at a couple of things here, this is one thing that this is college football data. This is where I get a lot of my statistics, and then I organize them, with my own type of method. But if you look at, this is what's called an advanced box score. They do all these different metrics and whatnot. The post-game win expectancy for Kansas State last week against Tulane was 61%. And this is what is most eye-opening to me. Tulane had 9 scoring opportunities. And that means they were inside the 40 of Kansas State 9 times. That is just that. I mean, you're flirting with disaster there. Um, because you're only going to average between 10 to 12 possessions a game, depending on how the game plays out. But to have 9 opportunities in an opposing defense, and they only came away with 20 points, which is not great. That's 2.2 points per opportunity. Kansas State, much better. They capitalized on those. But that right there gives me a lot of pause if I'm a Kansas State backer or if I'm looking for that. Now, you can look through all these other things here. I'm not really looking on this side here. This is like usage rate and things of that nature. But you can see that Tulane was very explosive overall on pretty much every single down. And so that is something that really stands out to me. And when I look over here at your basic overall rushing stuff, it's pretty standard. There's not anything crazy. And then the field position was pretty spot on normal. Now, when I go over here to look at the Arizona win expectancy, they played Northern Arizona. It was an ugly game, but they were going to win that game. 95% post-game win expectancy. They only allowed Northern Arizona across their 40 twice. Now, they did give up 10 points, which is not good, obviously, but they really came up short on the opportunity standpoint. And that also is not great because, that's exactly what we just saw in the Tulane game. But if you're giving up 9 opportunities to Tulane here, I'm going to think that Arizona, who is much better, if given the same opportunities, is going to connect more in that aspect. And so as we scroll back here, it's 2 things. When we're looking at games like this, it's hard to handicap every single angle, right? You're really just wanting to try to find an area that you're going to excel in because, there's a lot of variables. Like, we're not going to sit here and we're not going to sit and try to project turnovers and shit like that. It's just that's not what we're going to do. That's basically, a fake analysis. Obviously if they win the turnover margin, they're probably going to win the game, but we can't predict those things. But what we can predict here is that Arizona has the opportunity to have explosive plays, especially through the passing game, which is their strength, which is where they rely on the majority of their offense. And Kansas State, in my opinion, has not shown to really excel in any one direction. They're still just getting into the rhythm of the season. And so as you look here, they play Tennessee Martin and Tulane. So they haven't really, had much competition. Obviously, neither has Arizona, let's be completely honest here. But I think the 7.5 is a little high. I would probably have it around 5, maybe 6. But I think the matchup here, it's another strength on weakness, which is kind of what we're looking at, right? And so that's going to be my angle for the game. A lot of people, they're not going to be able to get the ability to take props on college players, based off where they live in the country. But I think Arizona is gonna cover here. They have the potential to win, especially if they get hot in the passing game. But I'm not going to go as far as that to say they're going to win outright. But I do think they're going to cover, and it should be a very competitive and actually entertaining game for a Friday night when most of those are pretty much snooze fests. So that's going to be it for this video and this episode. This is going to kind of be the new format. I kind of like being able to break down through the sheets and stuff and kind of show you what I'm looking at and what I'm working with to give you more insight to the madness to my method. So as always, if you want to see more content like this, just comment, like, subscribe on the YouTube. You can reach out to me on Twitter. You can message me or you can email me at the mintnermethod@gmail.com. And as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.